So, Sanjay Choda Soki Choknam La Chanchu Padu Dagi Kyapsuchi Dagi Jinso Gi Pe Sudnam Ki Drola Penju Sanjay Drupashu Sanjay Choda Soki Choknam La Chanchu Padu Dani Kyapsuchi Sagi Jiso Gipe Sunagi Rula Penjia Sanjay Drupa Shu Sanjay Shoda Soki Chotnamla Chanchu Badu Dani Kapsuchi Sagi Jiso Gipe Sunagi Rula Penjia Sanjay Drupa Shu. Okay. Thank you for coming. Today's talk will be Guide to Vajrayana for Beginners. So the way that I have sort of structured the talk is I wanted to give first the high-level infrastructure of the the KTD, the KTCs, how the big infrastructure is set up, and then wanted to get into the how the practice for individual practitioners was set up, again, from the very high level by the 16th Galway Karmapa, and then get into how the two sort of support each other. So you, as an individual Vajrayana practitioner, how do you connect to what was laid out by the Karmapa in terms of practice, and how is the lineage structure there to help support that sort of practice? So I also thought that I think it would be more helpful to share some photos instead of a talking head. So let me see if I can accomplish that. Uh, okay, so that should come out. I think that's good. Um, so as we start, first is always to set the motivation of bodhicitta. There's the three excellences. Excellent in the beginning should set the motivation for any sort of practice, study, and meditation of the Dharma to that of bodhicitta, the benefit of all sentient beings. The second excellence is during the practice itself, is to be focused on single-pointedly focused on what task you're trying to accomplish. And last, you dedicate the merit at the end of the practice. So with that in mind, a little bit about the Kagyu school of Tibetan Buddhism. It traces its origin back to Buddha Shakyamuni, the most important source, of these specific practices that we do that characterize the Kagyu order is done by Tilopa, roughly 988 to 1069. He's one of the 84 Mahasiddhas of India, and he's developed the realization, enlightened realization that helped start the Kagyu lineage. The Kagyu lineage has 4 main schools and 8 sub-schools or newer schools. So the 4 main schools are Karma Khyamsung or Karma Kagyu, which is us. And that started with Dusum Kempa, the first Karmapa. And then the other 3 are Barom Kagyu, Selpa Kagyu, and Pagdru Kagyu. So again, just from the high level, so you understand that Kagyu has different sub-schools. The present order for the Karma Kagyu lineage is the 17th Galway Karmapa, Organ Trinley Dorje. He's the individual, that photo that I'm displaying now. The word Karmapa itself means the embodiment of all activities of the Buddha, or one who carries out the Buddha's activity. The historical seat of Karmapas has been Serpu Monastery in Tolung Valley of Tibet. The Karmapa's principal seat in exile is Dharmachakra Center in Rumtek Monastery in Sikkim, India. His regional monastic seats include Karma Triyana Dharmachakra in New York and Dapokagyu Ling in Norgin, France. So in 1980, the 16th Karmapa consecrated the KTD land after completing a full day of Chenrezig practice, Chenrezig Puja. And this was kind of the start of KTD as far as the location in Woodstock and the main center of his activity here in North America. The lineage itself has a sort of hierarchical nature to it. Kind of acknowledging the lineage. It has a hierarchical sort of nature to it based on the realization that the particular teachers have. So this is the 17th. So if we go back to the 16th Karmapa had 4 heart sons, and that included Shamar Rinpoche, Taisutu Rinpoche, Jontram Kongtrul Rinpoche, and Gosher Gyaltsab Rinpoche. The heart sons expression refers to the closest disciples or students, often senior lamas, and they're entrusted with carrying forth the teachings and responsibilities of the lineage between the different karmapas, so between the 16th and the 17th karmapa in this case. So they're responsible for finding the 17th in this case, and then training him and making sure that he can maintain the responsibilities of the lineage. So the responsibility of the lineage itself is the teachings, the practice, and the realizations that go along with, that are carried by the lineage. The prophecy by Guru Rinpoche on the Karmapas can be found and listed in a treasury by Jokgyur Drenshin Lingpa. So he was prophesied by the Buddha, and then it was later expounded on by Guru Rinpoche as far as the details of the individual Karmapas, the 21 Karmapas. So the main takeaway point here is that there is a sort of hierarchical nature to the lineage, and the Karmapa being the one at the top, and their main responsibility is to maintain all of the teachings and the realizations and the practices from one generation to the next generation. Now, when we say like the responsibilities, and give you one example. So for Taisitipa, and this was reference to some comments that Mingyur Rinpoche had made. This was roughly 2006. And one of the things that the lineage masters do at this level is find the next tulku, or in a particular line, a reincarnate master will come back, and then it becomes a recognition letter kind of acknowledges that particular teacher. And this recognition letters will include things such as the name of the mother, the name of the father, and location of the birth, and other factors that can help identify this particular reincarnate master. In one case, Mingyur Rinpoche recounted that Tai Situ had given an individual a letter and sealed it. And he said, in 4 years, you should do puja and you should make prayers, and then you can open the letter. And so he, so that went ahead and happened. The individual, after 4 years, did the prayers and the puja as requested and opened the letter, and it was a recognition letter. And in the letter, because it was 4 years into the, 4 years into the future, but the particular teacher, master that was reborn, was done so 3 years back. So that means the letter was written a year before the child was born, and then later, later that when the letter was opened, then the recognition was made and teacher was found. So maintaining the lineage includes issues that aren't sort of bureaucratic. It's a little more elevated. This is the house originally where this is the old White House that was originally where the land that they bought, and this is what they had originally, and this is where the Karmapa had blessed this land. Then after the old White House, there's another photo of him. It's an older photo, so it's a little grainy coming out. And at that time, he was giving very high level sort of teachings and empowerments one after the other to all the students that happened to be there at that time. So this is sort of a mid photo showing the old White House where it used to be, and then the monastery, the temple monastery where we practice. And then this is more modern view where you can see don't have the old White House anymore. You've got more of the monastic, the more modern housing accommodations are set up there. And this again is a more of a full shot of the building and so you got the temple here, and then the housing or surrounding it. So this individual, we have when we talked about the other part as far as the lineage and Karmapa and the monastic sort of side of the house, there's also the Siddha side. And the term Siddha means one who is accomplished or great master. It comes from the Sanskrit word siddhi, which means attainment of perfection. Siddhas are known for their unconventional behavior and their dedication to the spiritual pursuits and the start of lineages, or start of the Dharmachakra lineage. The individual being shown is Repasotram Tarchin. To my knowledge, the best of my knowledge, he still is alive. He was born in 1947 in the village of Kamchen, located in the vicinity of Kyodrak, a few hours outside of Nanshan or Eastern Tibet. Not too much is known about his childhood or his youth. He was a student of the Mahasiddha Karma Norbu, whom he received transmission of the 6 yogas of Naropa. So go into a little bit of his background. He did a 3-year retreat or when his 3 year in 1993, when his 3 year retreat was over, he started a life of a wandering yogi. His teacher, Sagye Rinpoche, suggested he come to a particular mountain, Chamra, where many Barham Kagyu masters had meditated in caves and performed miracles. So this goes back to what I was saying, the 4 different main lineages under Kagyu. He he practiced for 6 years, and this led to him developing some of the realization abilities of a siddha. He lived on nettles and spring water, applied yogic methods to extracting life essence from minerals, and sometimes there was not even plants to eat in the area that he was living. According to his own words, this was one of the few special experiences or abilities he is admitted to. So a siddha, one of the special abilities that they can do is essentially live on sort of the essence of the minerals without needing to eat normal food or like. So usually someone that has the abilities like that will never admit to having any abilities whatsoever. So I thought it was important to mention the sort of siddha style or siddha side of the lineage. So this is Ani Karma Wangmo. She is the uh, student of the 16th Karmapa, and she received ordination as a nun. She's a student of Khenpo Karthar Rinpoche, and she took a 12-year silent retreat at KTD under Khenpo Karthar. She completed 100 consecutive nunes before performing Vajrayana practice. At KTD, at the larger compound that I showed, the big picture, the particular cabin that she did her practices in is still there. It's maintained sort of where the kitchen is. It's a little farther back into the mountain. You can see it if you go there. I believe they maintain it just sort of out of respect for her because she was first sort of serious student. And the reason that she had done the 100 consecutive nunes is there was no retreat, traditional 3-year retreat facilities for her to do a traditional 3-year retreat. So she wanted to do Vajrayana practice. In order to be allowed to do that, Khenpo had said, well, you need to do 100 consecutive nunes. So she did that. So the particular cabin that she did her practice in is maintained there at KTD out of respect. So I don't know if it's being used at the moment. So the KTD building, the white building, the old building is where the 16th Karmapa gave teachings, empowerments, performed ceremonies for students that were gathered there. Then eventually the 16th Karmapa left KTD, essentially saying, if you have any questions, ask Khenpo Karthar Rinpoche. Khenpo Karthar had been given a list of sort of like a honey-do list of different things that the 16th Karmapa wanted him to complete. A few of them included establishing his North American seat, building a monastery, and establishing a 3-year retreat program. He actually gave him a specific date on when the KTD should be opened. So it turned out later that Khenpo Karthar was able to open KTD on the exact date that their Karmapa had given to him in when given him instructions on what to do. So I'm gonna a little bit of a side tangent. A devotion is very important in the lineage. Um, Kagyu teachers say that at the moment of strong devotion towards someone one can trust and rely on completely, there comes an opportunity to recognize Mahamudra. Faith and devotion are therefore very important. Devotion or strong yearning is important because Mahamudra cannot be recognized through studies and intellectual learning alone, nor through simply accumulating merit and purifying obscurations. Kempo Karthar was able to fulfill the wishes of the 16th Karmapa, and that showed his devotion to Karmapa and to the lineage. In talks, he did, especially during the 10-day teachings that he did, any time that he brought up the lineage, he would break down in tears just because of his devotion for the lineage. So sometimes the translators would try to avoid asking questions about that because it made it difficult to finish the talk. So also we were very fortunate that he avoided scandals during his time. Devotion is necessary because the individual without it will not make consistent effort in practice. And without that consistent effort and practice, what we call diligence, then the student will not develop. So devotion is very important. And it's also important for Mahamudra, as I mentioned earlier, which is the highest meditation teaching. So this is Kempo. I thought this was cute, and it was Christmas. No. For some reason, they developed this habit of giving him plushies. I'm not sure why that developed, but it became a thing. So there's lots of photos of him with very cute, like plushy animals. That's more formal looking. So we have KTD, and KTD essentially then rolls up to the main monasteries. And in terms of structure, it's the monasteries, Serpa Monastery, that kind of controls, has the sort of power or control, and then it flows downward to KTD, and then downward farther to the KTCs and KSSGs. So KTD itself, just to break down the word a little bit, is karma Triyana Dharmachakra. And the word itself, Dharmachakra, can also be broken down into Choki Kolo, Cho meaning Dharma, and Ki is the grammatical particle indicating possession, and then Korlo means wheel. So it's basically turning the wheel of Dharma, literally. And then the Triyana, tree meaning three, and Yana, vehicle. So it's turning the Dharma, the wheel of Dharma for the three vehicles. Now KTD, from KTD, which is in Woodstock, the other groups, the KTCs, are well, it used to be true before COVID that the KTCs would be about 30 or so in size, 30 members in size. I don't know if that's true anymore after COVID. And then KSSGs are Karma Kagyu study groups, and they're smaller than the KTCs. So the main takeaway point here is the structure of the monasteries have the knowledge and the realization and the formal power and then it flows downward to KTD, and then the KTCs and KSSGs are more of your local connection into the larger hierarchy. Depending on your situation, may have to travel to one of the centers. Certain things will only be at KTD, but if you have a local KTC or KSSG, it makes it easier for you to practice and to study and to connect, because traveling can be quite expensive. So if there is a local center and you have access to it, I encourage you to connect and help support the individual centers. So now I'm going to shift gears. Well, first I wanted to bring this up. The Dallas KTC, and this is back in the 90s. If you look closely, you can see it's dot matrix printer. So that's how old it is. Each of the different KTCs and KSSGs, they all have their own sort of unique origin story, and they all have their own flavor or things that they do. In this particular case, they had a mascot called the Dharmadillo that they used for a while. And the Dharmadillo is, the idea was you had the hard outer shell to handle the difficulties of the samsaric world, and then the soft underbelly of bodhicitta. So, and there's a bell and dorje in his hands there. So Bruce Rowe was the individual who came up with it at the time. So shift gears a little bit. Now talk about the practice path. This is the 16th Karmapa, with the black hat crown, and the black hat is represent his ability to help all beings. So the 16th Karmapa, when he gave instructions to Khenpo Karthar, he gave a sequence of practices that should be taught to students. And the first practice was shamatha, tranquility meditation. And that's taught at the centers along with the 7 points of Vajrayana, which is the physical posture of sitting. That's taught freely, openly, no restrictions, taught to the public, a service actually to the public as far as how to meditate. Lojong mind training is the second practice, and that's sending and receiving. That's to develop love and compassion. I think Lama Kathy covered that in an earlier talk. So that again also is very open, practiced, and taught freely. After that, the third practice that he laid out was Nundro. Nundro is involved. It starts with the 100,000 prostrations. 100,000, and the 100,000 prostrations purifies body. 100,000 Vajrasattva, purify mind. Mandala, 100,000 to accumulate merit, and 100,000 Guru Yoga to connect with the Guru. For Westerners with a job, this usually takes 5 to 10 years. It can go faster. In retreat, it's 1 month per, so you're done in 4 months. So it really depends on your situation and your karma and whether you're in due diligence. So after Nundro, the fourth practice is Mahamudra, and that is the most advanced meditation teaching. You can also say it's the most subtle. The more your meditations advance, the more subtle they become. And then last is Karmapakshi practice, was the final practice. So that was the sequence that was laid out. So Mahamudra, I'll get into a little about that. Just so you kind of understand generally what it's about. Um, the way that Khenpo Karthar kind of explained it is the way to the types or the Mahamudra instruction types. The first type of instruction is called instructions in words of a Pandita. This means a correct explanation of the meaning of the words that are used in the instruction or text of instructions. So this is when different teachings are passed down from one teacher to the next throughout the lineage. It's very, the way that they teach is they'll memorize a text. And then after memorizing a text, they'll be given line by line instructions about the text, explaining the text. And then they'll be tested on their understanding. So when teachers formally pass down a particular text, let's say Jewel Ornament of Liberation, they've gone through this process so that they are capable of doing that. The second is the gradual instructions of a meditator. This means that the teacher has given the student gradual instructions to the stages of practice based on the teacher's experience. And then third or the last is the experience instructions of a yogi. This means the teacher has such a solid background in practice that, in fact, he or she is teaching directly from personal experience. Although they may be using words of the text, they're still bringing in their own knowledge or realization. The two teachers that do that now in this lineage, Mingyur Rinpoche and Hai Situ Rinpoche. Different teachers will have different expectations, but usually this means Nundro. Either you've finished Nundro or you've made a substantial dent in it. So, in terms of texts, so there's two quotes that I want to pull from Eliminating the Darkness of Ignorance, the ninth Galway Karmapa. The ninth Galway Karmapa is known for his Mahamudra texts. So Mahamudra, when you get to that point, the question is, you'll hear things like pointing out instruction when you start talking about Mahamudra. So what is pointing out instruction? And so the quote is, after you have after you have examined or looked at the nature of mind and reached a decision about it, you must experience it in meditation and recognize the experience it in terms of what you have previously ascertained. Therefore, the guru is essential, for through his interplay and questioning, he leads you to the correct decision about the nature of mind and confirms for you when you have had a true meditational experience or insight into it. This is what it means for a guru to make you recognize your mind, or literally to introduce you to it. So you'll hear that expression, pointing out instruction. And nowadays, because of Amazon and the ease of access to books, individuals will get drawn to very advanced sort of texts just out of curiosity or sort of marketing of the books themselves. But traditionally, there is a process of development and getting you ready to introduce advanced practices. So yes, this is a beginner's course, and yes, this is fairly advanced material, but I think because of the way things are nowadays, you kind of have to understand why things are structured this way. Why do you need, to follow this process of development and so forth? And where are you going with it? So again, this is meant at the bigger sort of 5,000 foot level of your total practice. Um, and the other quote deals with why you shouldn't sort of try to expose yourself to some of these higher teachings before you're really ready. Um, and the quote is, if the guru tries to make you recognize the nature of mind before you have had any meditative experience, you will have only an intellectual understanding. Because your smugness and self-satisfaction, you will become jaded, lacking all appreciation of the profundity of the teachings. Closed-mindedly, you will feel you understand everything already, and therefore will disparage all of your guru father's efforts to teach you. Like a stone in water, you will not absorb anything he says, and thus you will make no progress. Therefore, it is better for the guru to be reserved about teaching the nature of mind, lest he do so prematurely and jade the disciple. So the meditation manuals were written by great masters um, to help students in the future. It was written by a meditator to another meditator in the language of meditation and experience. So if you haven't developed that, it doesn't click. So also nowadays, it comes up because of after COVID, why do people want to attend a center and instead rely on books and videos and Zoom calls? And there are particular practices that have to be done in person. Refuge is done in person, empowerments are done in person. Um, There are something called soak, which is a feast uh, practice, and it's done for purifying samaya with your Vajra brothers and sisters. The other aspect is group practice has a sort of karmic multiplier effect. So it's not 1 + 1 student, it's more of exponentially uh, beneficial. So the more individuals in group practice, the more accumulation of merit. So the different, whatever's available as far as the KTCs supporting them or KSSGs or KTD, anything you can do to be helpful or contribute in that way. Um, Also, it's important to develop a karmic connection with the particular teacher, and that really has to be done in person. There's teachings from Kempo Karta over the years that were experiential in person, and you can't really get it over a Zoom call or a book. And I gave a few examples of that, with his connection with the lineage and how that would, very strong devotion and how that manifested with him and his ability to complete very um, demanding tasks that the 16th Karmapa had given to him. So to really kind of get that feel and really uh, make that sort of a connection, it's something that has to be done in person. Books are wonderful for knowledge. You can read a book 100 times and the book doesn't get mad at you. It'll say the same thing 100 times, but you can't really ask a book a question. So there's limits on what different options can do and what they can't. Um, so a little bit of the let's see, check where I'm at here. Okay. So to get a little bit into the last one, karma practice, I'm going to talk a little bit about Tantra classes or classifications. So there's Kriya Tantra. Um, there's four different classes. The first is the Kriya Tantra, which is the Tantra of activity. It focuses on outer activities of body, speech, and mind, and has an emphasis of external actions such as purification, cleanliness, ritual practice. It emphasizes maintaining the proper environment and behaviors, cultivating positive qualities, purifying negative karma. Most of the practices, the deity practices, fall under this category: Chenrezig, Medicine Buddha, Green Tara, White Tara, Amitabha, Nune. The second is Kriya Tantra, sometimes called Performance Tantra or Tantra of Action. It emphasizes equal ways of working with the outer and inner. We don't really have a lot of practices that fit into this classification, so I just mention it sort of for completeness. Yoga Tantra is the third. Uh, this is when the practices become more internalized and they focus more on the inner path of skillful means and wisdom. Some of the tantras that mentioned earlier that are Kriya Tantra fall into this group, depending on how they're done or the individual sort of sadhana practice itself. So Amitabha, Green Tara, and in some cases, Chenrezig. The fourth is a Nutra Yoga Tantra, or highest and most advanced. The Tantras, it focuses on the wisdom of the union of wisdom and method. When you start getting into this, you're getting into advanced generation and completion stage. Completion stage is another name for Mahamudra. You're working with subtle body energies, prana, nadas, and bindus. And the examples for them include Karma qualifies as a Nutra Yoga practice. Other ones like Mahakala, Vajrayogini, Chakrasambhara, 6 yogas of Naropa. Now to kind of, now that I have that laid out, kind of fall back a little bit. So when you're dealing with Kriya Tantra and different students, they tend to be practices that are simple in terms of the visualization, not in terms of the profundity, but the visualization demands are not as complex. They tend to be peaceful and single-faced, and they're relatively easy to relate to. They can be done kind of with a sutric or tantric approach. The sutric approach emphasizing more the accumulation and purification, and the tantric more the nature of mind and Mahamudra. Students sometimes may have difficulty visualizing themselves in certain ways. So maybe the person is male and they have a female Yidam deity, and they have difficulty with visualizing themselves as a female, or vice versa. It shows some this sort of stickiness, kind of shows some fixation still on the body, and on not understanding emptiness very well just yet. It's not something to be mad or beat yourself up about. It's just something to observe. When you shift to the Anuttara Yoga practices, their visualizations are more involved. You get more into the idea of transmutation, and the symbolism of sort of taking what is considered profane or what is dirty or foul, and then seeing those in more pure and virtuous ways. So, for example, The Nutra Yoga tantras will show male and female in union, having sex basically. Um, so that would be the profane, but the male is viewed as method and the female is viewed as wisdom. And there's meant to be a union to show the unity of method and wisdom. So the idea here is there's a deeper, profound meaning to the techniques and the practices and the rituals, and not to get too caught up in what might seem to be profane. Another example is on the shrine, you may have a cupola there, and it has some liquid that you use to bless the shrine. And you're expected to think of that as ambrosia or a blessing substance. And in practice, it's hard liquor. So again, what would be perceived as profane, the hard liquor, but yet visualizing and thinking of it as ambrosia or dutsi. And in some of the inner practices, some of the beings can be seen as semi-wrathful or fully wrathful. So again, the getting sort of stuck on, with the Kriya Tantra, maybe having difficulty with, visualizing the different genders or things like that. And now you're pushing it farther where you're challenging, more of the taboos, so to speak. And the goal here again is more the transmutation aspect, that this all has very deep, profound meaning to it, and not to get caught up on sort of the initial maybe gut response. As far as just generally speaking, with Yidam practices, you kind of focus on the Yidam that you feel kind of an affinity for. This is kind of assuming if you've taken a look at it and you're like, you may look at the Nundro and think, well, according to the sequence that you've laid out, is just maybe a little much for where you're at. If that's the case, then may emphasize another practice, one of the Yidam practices to work with. So if you for the particular Yidam practices, there is 3 parts that you need if you're going to do it by yourself. There's an empowerment, or the Wang. There is a reading transmission, the Long, and then there's the instructions on how to practice. The empowerment would have to be done in person, and if you have a local KTC or KSSG, you may be able to have a teacher sort of come there, and makes it easier to connect that way and to support your practice. The Lung, sometimes they'll do those on a call, on like a Zoom call sometimes. I've seen that. And then the instructions on the practice, that can be, a combination of text and on a video call or so forth, as far as the instructions. The 2 exceptions are Chenrezig and Medicine Buddha. They can be practiced at home by yourself without an empowerment, but of course, encourage one to get the empowerments when you can. So this is kind of the way that the formal structure is set up, as far as the lineage, and it's sort of the power control, the decisions are made there on the monastic side, and then how that kind of flows down to the KTD and then the individual KTCs, and then trying to connect, like I said, the different practices that Karmapa had laid out as far as how to develop students. It's a lot. And so again, a talk was presented again from the high level, the 5,000-foot level, to just kind of introduce these ideas to you, so you kind of know the process. And then the centers and the teachers are all there to kind of help guide you along and to work with you. I did have a few other teachings coming up on the hour. So share a few of them with you. Um, this is the 17th Karmapa, and this is when 17th Karmapa was paying sort of I guess, a lifetime tribute to Kempo Carter for all of the things that he had accomplished that helped maintain the lineage. The work that he's done is very important for maintaining the lineage. Um, so that's Kempo Carter, and then I think you can see my cursor. That's Pono Rinpoche. That's Lama Yeshe, translator. That's Lama Kathy. That's me without a beard. This is another kind of group photo. Again, KTD. These are big events, so this is not every Sunday. These are large events. So this is the Munlam, so it's a different event than what I was showing before. You can see there is a sitting order that they have. I do not understand it. Kempo Tengyal might be able to explain it, but it's kind of based on seniority and some other factors, years of being a monastic. So there is a seating order that falls back. And then in the back here, you see the individuals all wearing white. So for the Munlam, they requested that lay people wear white. That's why they're all dressed that way. Behind the pillar, you can't see, of course, is 17th Karmapa's sister. So she was at the event. This is an example of a soak or sort of feast blessing. So the most important thing as far as consumption, it's a blessing. The food is blessed and it's meant to purify the negativity or any sort of broken samayas and so forth that one has accumulated. The individual tormas, if you're going to, that would be take a bite of that when it's handed out. In the ceremony, they bless all the food, and then it's sort of divided amongst everybody there. And the torma itself would have the most blessing. So if you didn't want to consume a lot of food, just a little bit of the torma is considered good. I just like this photo. Okay. Just a home. So this is Maureen McNichols, and I bring her up because as an example, that there are many, many people over the years that have helped KTD and the KTCs and the KSSGs, and you don't always know or see them. They just help. And she's an example of one of them. She's notorious for disappearing when a camera comes up. She helped in the old house, the White House that I showed at the start. She was the cook. And then eventually she wasn't able to do that anymore. And she's done the transcription work for Dharma paths, translating that. So transcribing that into text so that it could eventually be published. And there are many people that have contributed in many ways. And I just wanted to bring one small example up. Many have contributed to the retreat center, giving their time and their money to help make the retreat centers happen, and a lot of other projects over the years. So just a way of acknowledging that. This is an empty shrine room. KTD, when it's empty, it's a strange like fishbowl lens or something because it's kind of bowed. the room is not bowed like that. But it's hard to get the entire shrine room in a photo. So this is the columbarium, the stupa here in the center that has Kembakartar's stupa has his ashes in there, some of his ashes, and some relics. And this is like a semicircle in the back behind him, behind that. If you wanted to be buried here, this is a columbarium, so you can have your sort of ashes entombed there if you wanted to. Essentially, you'd be being buried or being cremated and stored on sort of Buddhist ground. This is where the retreat center is, so there'd be constant practice there. Just kind of making aware that it exists. This last photo shows the 17th Karmapa, 16th and the 17th Karmapa, sort of side by side. Teachers will sometimes, when they reincarnate, they will reincarnate in the same body type. So this will, in some cases, give students confidence because the previous looks like the present. So it helps them believe, helps their faith. So sometimes teachers will keep reincarnating the same sort of body type. There's other photos like this showing the 16th and the 17th Karmapa at different ages and how they look very similar. So we're at an hour's time. So I wanted to go ahead and see if there were any questions. And because usually about after an hour, people kind of zone out a little bit. The stuff is heavy.
If you have questions, please enter them in the chat and share them with everyone.
How do I see the chat?
I can read them, or at the bottom of the screen, there's a chat button that will bring up the chat. And if somebody puts something in there, it will you'll get a little pop-up, and if you click on that, it'll open the chat also.
Okay.
But there are no questions right now.
Oh, wait,
there is one. Lindsay just put in a question. I have a question regarding the karmic connection between student and teacher. If one believes they have made such a connection, how do they go about initiating that relationship?
Yeah. So if they believe they have a connection with that teacher, the first would be if they are giving a talk. A lot of times they'll have interviews, and you can ask whoever is hosting, if it's KTD or if it's a KTC, if that teacher is available for interviews, and you can have start a conversation with that teacher that way. Every teacher is a little different as far as their willingness to accept students. So
弟子的这个摄受呢，他们的方式
it'll just kind of depend on the situation.
都是不一样的。Yeah, there's another question. Are you done, Lama, answering?
Yes.
OK， 所以每一位上师情况都是不一样的。你如果有见面的机会，就一定要争取去见上师。然后呢，这个有个干嘛妙的师姐 ，she asked, she likes the first picture of Garmava with the black hat very much. Can she have one? Can you share that picture with everybody?
How do I share? I don't know. How do I share that? Can I share that?
Yeah, if you JPEG or something, you can give to Yundenla. then he can share on the chat, I think.
Yeah. Well, the easiest way to share it is to put it is to share it with Linda in the office, and then it can be put into the class page.
Oh, the thing is, somebody is not registered. Somebody, there are people not registered.
Oh.
Can we put picture in the chat? I think chat can.
Can it do that?
It has to. You would have to put it in sharing mode and then share the link in the chat.
Okay, so
You can't just put the picture in the chat.
Okay, we'll figure out. Like.
So he asked if we can figure out how to do it.
Yeah, you will figure out, and either I share on my WeChat group or something, or you share on the class link. Yeah, we can do that.
Okay.
是可以的啊，可以的。我们会把它这个照片到时候发在那个我们课程，如果注册的同学可以在注册的网站上下载，然后呢，如果没有注册的如果你有我的微信的话，我会再分享到微信群里、微信的朋友圈里面或者什么时候。
This is the photo she likes, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So, because of politics, the 17th Karmapa doesn't have access to the
由
treasury
于政治的问题呢，所以呢，
or in the
是
Supu monastery.
啊，
That
是
includes Black Hat.
所以17世法王呢，他现在因为是在这个隆德寺里面，17世法王还拿不到这个黑宝冠。
There's a question in Chinese that was sent directly to me. Sonam, I just sent it to you.
Okay, it is. When we do the shamatha meditation, it said use the mind to watch the mind, to observe the mind, abiding in the mind itself. Does that mean like you put your attention to the position of your heart?
So shamatha meditation, the technique that is you start with is the breathing meditation, and the way that that's done is you have a particular object that you focus on. In music, they have something called a metronome. It goes tick, 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 and then you play your music and you tie it to the ticking of the metronome. In meditation, you use a particular object, in this case, the breath, to sort of remind yourself to check in. Have you been distracted? Have you been distracted? And if you find out that you have, you sort of bring yourself back to the breath. So you focus on the breath to sort of calm the mind down. When you get into practices like that, you're no longer needing an object. You can just be aware of your mind and it won't be distracted. So it's sometimes called objectless shamatha. So that's what I believe that text sounds like it's referring to.
So it doesn't actually have an exact position you should pay attention to.
Correct. You're just aware of what is going on.
Yeah, I think.
And not being distracted. And that takes time.
Yeah. 所以，如果您说的是止的修法，寂止的修法的时候呢，不是观啊，是止的修法的时候呢，喇嘛说最开始呢，是我们要来关注呼吸的，我们是利用这个呼吸呢作为一个对境，一个所缘，就像你在音乐这个学音乐的时候，你要有个节拍器吧，当哒那个节拍器，就是这个呼吸呢，我们就是把它当成一个节拍器，专注在这个呼吸上呢，然后就这作为检查我们的心是不是散逸了。我们心跑了，比如在想别的时候，你就记不起呼吸了，你就数息嘛，就忘了数到哪里了。一出一进，一呼一吸，你就忘失了。 那这个时候就再把心拉回来。所以这个呼吸呢是作为一个工具，你的一个对境。但是当你说到说以心安心、以心观心的这个程度的时候，实际上应该是已经到了这个无所缘的一个直观指的时候了。这个时候就没有一个固定的位置，说你要把它放在心脏上，就是你就是安住在心上，就是没有，就是来觉察这个心。你心走了的时候，你就要把它再回来。这时候没有任何，就是没有心本身，它就是作为你的所缘了，就没有其他的所缘了。Yes，那么了。
So meditation in general moves from more coarse mind to more and more subtle mind. So sometimes you'll hear contemplation, so that when a thought arises in the mind and you care about the content of it, that's more analytical meditation. So four ordinary thoughts that turn the mind to Dharma, sort of a contemplation. So you care about the content of the thought. And then shamatha meditation, you calm the mind down. You want to calm it down so that it can be examined and worked with.
一般的禅修呢，我们说到，就是有这个是它一般都是从粗到细的一个过程。通常我们开始我们说有一个叫做思维的过程，思维的时候之后，你就要关注你心里面想的内容，你的念头的内容。就是要这个时候呢，就要比如说你要分析它的内容，这个叫做分析禅修，分析的这个一个修法。比如我们就要用一个转心思法呢，让心里面升起正念来。这个是很粗的一个程度了。然后呢，到修到止的时候呢，我们就是要心安静下来。让心安静下来的目的呢，就是为了下面可以做观，可以去检视，就是可以去做观。Yes，来么了？
Are we ready for another question?
Yeah.
Uh, there's a question. What is the difference between a transmission and an empowerment?
Empowerment is you receive the blessing to do the practice. Empowerment has two aspects. One is a purification aspect, body, speech, mind, and the unity of the three. And then the second aspect of empowerment is sort of is a catalyst component. So the example sometimes given is that of milk becoming yogurt. So in order for milk to become yogurt, there needs to be a catalyst to make it happen, to change. One's Buddha nature is always there and unchanged, but to sort of activate it, to give it that catalyst to develop, you need its empowerment. Transmission is just going from one individual to another. So a lung is like a straight reading of, let's say, a particular text. That's a transmission, like a reading transmission. So that is not like an empowerment to do a yidam practice. It's just you're passing on the teachings or the words, depending on what's being transmitted, let's say from the Buddha or from a particular master or so forth to you. This is an important notion in our tradition, that whatever that text that's being transmitted from whomever composed it, let's say Jewel Ornament of Liberation, for example, Gampopa, to when you receive the transmission means when that teacher wrote it and spoke it, that's passed down from student to teacher until you have heard it from that person. So it's got that aspect of lineage from its origin. Not the same, though, as an empowerment.
那他的问题就是说，一个口传、一个传授和这个灌顶，有什么区别呢？那么说灌顶呢，它是主要是给予我们修持呢一个加持。它有两方面的作用，一方面呢就是清净我们身语意三门的这个恶业，然后另一方面呢就是它作为一个催化剂，就像把一个牛奶变成一个酸奶一样，它就起了一个催化剂的作用。 虽然我们的佛性呢是恒久，就是无始无终，就是它是恒常没有任何变化的，但是为了激发它呢，就是为了展现开展出来呢，是需要一个这个催化剂的。那么这时候这个灌顶呢就是起这个作用的。而那个口传呢，它是不太一样的。口传呢是就是一对一的，就是上师把他所得到的这个传承呢，就是在通过这个念诵也好，通过什么就是传递给弟子。呃，比如说是某一个本尊的这个修法，或者是一个教言，一部这个有来自于佛陀或者某位上师的一个教言。在我们传承中，这个口传也是非常重要的。比如说这些重要的典籍，像《解脱庄严宝鬘论》呀、冈布巴的这些著作呢，我们都是有这个传统呢，就是要有这个已经有这个传承的，就他上师给予他口传的念诵这个口传的这个传统的上师那里呢，要来接受的，就是他跟那个灌顶呢是不一样的。Yes, Lama.
Okay.
Ready for another question?
Yes.
Uh, from there's a question: is there a current younger generation of lineage holders the 17th Karmapa is working with, like the 16th Karmapa did?
Not that I am aware of at the moment. I think the most interesting one right now is Mingyur Rinpoche and Taisitu. Mingyur Rinpoche's one of his teachers is Taisitu Rinpoche, and he is, I'd say that at the moment he's the lineage meditation master. I think I can get away with saying that. So I would say that Mingyur Rinpoche probably represents the next generation. But it's specifically come up. I'm not familiar with if he's working with a group at this moment. Doesn't mean
Is the question about like whether current Karmapa is teaching the younger generation?
I took it as a question of, so 16th Karmapa had students that he was like working with really closely, and that's kind of the way I took it. There may be, I'm just not necessarily aware of it. So the one that I'm aware of is Taisitu and Mingyur Rinpoche.
这个问题呢是说，17世法王现在有没有像16世法王当时不是他直接就是教导了身边这些法王子啊，就是这么，直接教导的这些弟子有没有？这个喇嘛说他不太清楚，他说只是知道呢，像太虚度仁波切是明珠仁波切的上师，他们是有这些就是这个关系的，但是他现在不太清楚。
Next question. It may have already been answered in your in response to the first question, because they were entered at about the same time. As how can we connect with a teacher after refuge?
So, like I say, one thing was to talk to the person who is hosting the KTD or the KTC that's hosting that event. The other way would be to talk to students of that teacher if you can ask around and see if there are students of that teacher. And that will also give you some more insight, meaning if you wanted to be a student of that teacher, you can ask an existing student what the process is. And also, once you're considering that, part of that process is, how do you decide that you have an interest in a particular teacher? One way is to look at the students, because the students are the product of the teacher's guidance. So how do you feel about those students collectively? Do you feel like do you like the direction that they're moving in? And that can kind of give you a good gauge if you think this would be a good fit for you. So I think the formal way of, whoever's presenting the talk, but also the informal way of starting to network and talk to some of the existing students of that teacher and see if you feel it's a good fit for you.
那他这个问题呢，问的跟第一个问题有点类似。他说是在皈依之后，怎么样去跟上师建立起法缘，怎么去亲近上师？那这个喇嘛说呢，首先就跟刚才回答一样，就说你可以请问这个 KTT、KTC 他们的一些管理人员呢，就是我怎么样去来跟这个上师面谈。就安排一个面谈，这是很重要的。然后呢，另一个途径呢，就是你可以来找到这个上师的弟子们，就是你可以跟弟子们来取经啊，就是说你看看，如果真的想成为这位上师的弟子呢，你是有什么方，他们有什么方法？另一个呢，你可以从弟子的身上呢，去感受一下，就是说你会不会真的想要皈依这位上师？因为弟子呢，他是这个相当于某种程度上是上师这个教导的一个结果吧。你可以从这个弟子的这个整体上来看，你说你是不是喜欢他们的这个展现出来的东西？这是也是一个很好的了解这个上师的一个途径。Yes, Lama.
Next question is, what is the interview room I see at KTD? What kinds of questions is it used for? And then kind of a follow-up part, is it appropriate to be giving a donation at an interview? And if so, what is an appropriate amount? How long is a session? Is it like booking a professional consult?
So interviews, part of this again will be to talk to whoever is sort of running that particular, if it's at a KTD or if it's a KTC. So in general, the way that it works is there's usually be someone in charge of scheduling interviews with that teacher. In general, they run about 15 minutes. Again, these are just in general because there's other things that you could do. As far as a donation, there's a certain protocol. There's a kata, which is a white sort of scarf. You sort of bring the white sort of scarf and offer it to the teacher. There's symbolism in the kata. It shows purity of intention. So it shows that you're not trying to make any sort of gain or anything like from that. You're just showing I have pure intention, and that's what the white kata offering symbolizes. As far as a donation, whatever you feel comfortable with. There's, as far as an appropriate amount, there isn't really like a set amount, either high or low. It's more of you offering your authentic interest and your authentic devotion. Now, as kind of a side note, I would say if you do make donations, and some people make donations to the teacher because they want the teacher to be able to teach and continue their activities. Sometimes people will make donations because they like a particular project that teacher is doing. And so if you're doing that, you may want to qualify what you're doing. So let's say they're building a stupa or something like that. So you might want to qualify and say, please use this money to build this, your stupa. Or if they're in charge of, let's say, some monastics, nuns or monks or so forth, you might want to make a donation specifically to those monks or nuns through that teacher. So you might want to qualify it and say, if I make a donation, would you be able to use that for the nuns or so forth?
那么他这个问题是关于这个面谈的。他说面谈的是一个什么形式？他问呢要问一些什么问题，还要不要做一些供养？如果供养的话，供养多少？通常这个面谈是多长时间？就是怎么样的形式？然后喇嘛说呢，你首先呢要跟这个安排这个面谈的管理人员，去请问一下，然后让他来做安排。通常呢在 KTD 呢是一般的情况下的面谈时间是15分钟每个人。因为人多的时候就是每个人15分钟，然后呢，当然也有可以做别的安排了。如果有更多的时间的话，你再做别的安排也是可以的。但是你这个要首先跟这个管理的人员， 说明。然后关于这个供养呢，供养的时候呢是通常呢是我们传统上是要献一个白色的哈达。白色的哈达呢象征的它的是一个你纯净的发心，你并不是为了这个得失利益等等方面的考虑，你是纯净的发心的一种真诚的供养，因为它是一个象征性的供养。那具体到这个供养的时候，那就是没有什么多少的限制，你完全就是看你的心意，你对于上师的这个真诚的发心就可以了，这个没有数量的要求的。就是特别说明的，就是如果你有的人是供养上师呢，就是为了让上师的这个佛行事业继续那个，他是来做这个一般的供养，供养给这个上师的。有的人，如果你是有一些特别的目的，比如说上师正在建塔，你想要做这个为上师建塔这项工程来做供养，或者是你想供僧啊，或者是想请上师帮你做什么事情啊，你都要说明的，就是你要跟上师说清楚，这个是供养的。Yes, Lamalahi, there's another part of the question asking what kind of questions are it used for? What kind of questions
What
you
type of
ask?
questions? Yeah.
Yeah, during the interview. Maybe that's the question.
Oh, okay. So it's pretty open to whatever you want to talk about. And this is kind of goes back to the individual, what's your time best used for? Certain information you can get from books, certain information you can get from other students, and then other information, you really kind of want to focus on what the teacher can uniquely help you with. 15 minutes of time is not a lot of time, so I'd probably say to focus on like your practice questions, things that you're not able to really answer through talking to other like senior students, or not through Zoom calls or other methods that you have. So, it may be questions about mostly I'd say your practice, because that I think is the hardest information to gather. But there's no, if you could go in there and have it as a therapy session, I mean, there's not, it's whatever questions you kind of need to ask that to help you with where you're at.
那就是关于这个面谈的时候要问的问题呢，这是也是没有限定的，也是根据你的具体的情况。当然这个15分钟其实是很短的，所以建议你呢是尽量的集中在这个修行的问题上。有一些你通过问师兄师姐们解决不了的这些问题，你要或者是，但是这是没有限制的，你可以任何的这个想要向上师敞开的这个都可以的。你如果就是只需要一个疗愈呀，需要一个什么？谈心啊，都是可以的。所以就是建议呢，大家还是尽量集中在这个修行的问题上。Yes, Lama.
If I can add one little detail about how it works at KTD, there's a sign-up sheet usually at the office if interviews are being offered, and there are time windows indicated on the sheet. So you sign up for a specific time window, and you go to the office for that. It's on the counter throughout the teaching usually.
因为他补充说明一下，就是在 KTT 呢，通常一个就是一个法会也好，教学也好，课程期间如果有这个面谈的机会呢安排的话呢，通常这个办公室呢，它会有一个清单，就是几点到几点，然后已经有多少人排队了，你就可以到办公室去登记，然后到时候就会通知你几点，就是你会知道几点钟，然后多长时间。
One other point I might add in is interviews, especially if it's a high level teacher, can be quite rare. So, you may only get a chance to interview, depending on who we're talking about, that particular teacher a few times in your lifetime. So, depending on the situation, um, help that guide your questions.
那这个有的就根据上师不同的上师啊，有的时候是很珍贵的一些上师，就很难得见到的，所以就是机会也不多，你就是要这时候要把握，就是比如有的上师你可能一生也就只能见他几次，所以有些机会是很难得的。
If there are any other questions, please add them in the chat. We don't have any right now.
还有问题的吗？
It appears there are no more questions, Lama.
That's the case. We can do the.
Myeodu, the sister, I think she copied the screen, the picture of Gamaba. I
Yeah.
shared it in the chat.
I can do a drag and drop and see if it takes.
There is an image of it there, and
Yeah, I
if
posted.
if you want, you can click the button in the upper right-hand corner. There's a little down arrow, blue, and that will give you the option to make a copy of it and save it on your computer.
就是喵度师姐把这个法王的像可能是照下来了，然后我放在这个聊天栏里。如果大家想要下载，可以这个右上角有一个下载的箭头，可以下载。
And I just confirmed that that worked.
Okay.
Yes.
Last call for any questions?
还有问题吗？
I think questions are done, Lamla.
Okay. Can do the dedication of merit.
那我们现在回向，做回向。
Sonam di tamche sipani. Sobni ne perona bajini. Egi ne chi balon trapai. Sepi sole drobwe nyo droshu.